Thank you for tuning in for LoveBabz Love Talk. I know it seems wild when we like do this double opening, but we do that because, excuse me, so that the guests can have the show to themselves without my commentary before the show. So that's why we do it. So it becomes its own standalone podcast, if you will. So I'm delighted this morning to welcome, and he'll be on in a minute, a few minutes, Raven Chacon, who was born in Fort Defiance, Arizona, within the Navajo Nation. He attended the University of New Mexico, where he obtained his BA in Fine Arts in 2001 and received his Master's in Fine Arts in Music Composition from California Institute of Art. So I read all his bio. I'm delighted to have him on. Yes, let him in, and we can have a really good conversation. So,
hello.
Good morning, Raven.
Good morning.
Welcome to LoveBabz Love Talk. It's so nice to have you with me this morning.
Thank you, Babz.
So, how are you? Are you in New Haven now?
I am. Arrived? Yeah, I got in yesterday.
Is this your first time here? This is not your first time here, is it?
It is. I've never been here.
Ah, well, you're in for a real treat because you're here all weekend.
Yeah.
Listen, don't say no to pizza because, we're the pizza capital.
Oh, yeah.
And today probably would be the nicest weather day this afternoon. Then after that, I don't know what to tell you.
Wonderful.
So I have been reading your bio. I read your bio at the top of the hour to let people know that you were coming on and all the great stuff that you have done. You are a Pulitzer Prize winner and a MacArthur Fellow, and the first Native American to win the Pulitzer.
Yeah, that's right. That was a surprise. I didn't know I was going to get that, obviously.
So, how does it make you feel to be like the first? Do you know what I mean? Like in 2024 or 2023 or whenever you won it, you're the first. Does that surprise you? Does that say, why didn't other natives win this thing?
Yeah, in a way. It does surprise me. But at the same time, there's not a whole lot of us doing this kind of thing. Of course, as we know, the music category thinks quite thin, until Kendrick Lamar won. I think it mostly been focused towards classical music or using classical instruments, and hopefully that changes. But yeah, as far as those of us who are Native American who make music with these instruments, there hasn't been a whole lot of us until more recently. I'm happy to say that, through our efforts of mentoring younger composers who are indigenous, and there just being more young people, smart young people out there. There is more of us now. So maybe it's I don't know. Maybe I'm not so surprised that it didn't have to be me either. I mean, I have colleagues who've written beautiful works, wonderful works, but I'm just excited that this work in particular got recognized.
So how do you come to this work? How do you come to this music? Were you a kid that was musically inclined and your parents said, okay, let's just feed this? Or did you know you wanted to be a musician? Like when did it hit you?
I knew I wanted to be a musician. I mean, I wanted to play in a band, but I wasn't playing any instruments yet. And, I really wanted to play saxophone or guitar. And when the family moved from the reservation to the city, to Albuquerque, a woman offered to give us free piano lessons. And I didn't want to play piano, but they said, you got to do this. It's free, it's free lessons to me and my sister. So we did that. And I still, to this day, I can't say that I even write for the piano, but what it did do for me is teach me how to read music notes and understand the instruments better. So, eventually I use it with that knowledge. I did teach myself the guitar and other instruments, and that's where it went from there. Having this knowledge.
So you knew early on that you wanted to be a musician.
Yeah,
And did
yeah.
your family or your parents say, okay, that's nice. However, you have to eat and you have to have a roof and you need a da da da. Did they, how supportive were they? Or I think all parents are supportive, but when you say musician or artist, they all sort of hold their breath a little bit. So
Yeah.
what was that like?
It was both. My mother said no, and my father said, "Let's try it." And so I think I value both. Um, the cautiousness, but also the adventurousness, or the willingness to see if I was gonna have an interest there, and then maybe it would fade and I'd go do something else. But I think both of them were attentive to see what would happen. But my mother was scared until about 10 years ago. I'm 47 years old. I don't think she really knew what I did until about 10, 15 years ago.
I love that because when I talk to musicians from like Africa or the Caribbean or any place where folks are of color, um, artistry is never the first occupation that parents want to support.
Yeah.
They always have a little bit of trepidation about how you're going to survive, and they have the whole starving artist thing in their heads. How old were you when you left the reservation?
About maybe 7 or 8 years old, and maybe a year later was when I started studying the piano.
Hmm. And so you have real concrete memories of being on the reservation.
Oh yeah, and I still, well, my family still lives there. A lot, the grandparents, the aunts and uncles, and so we were regularly going back. We only moved to Albuquerque, which is just about 2 hours away, really. But yeah, I regularly go back. I teach out there quite often. I teach music, so I'm
Hmm.
I'm back all the time, and am connected with the town that I grew up in as well. That's one of the schools that I teach at.
Hmm. Um, so you spend a great deal of time working with young people, young indigenous folks, young people around musicianship, composition, and all of that. When did you start doing that? Like, what was the catalyst for saying, let me see what I could do to grow this arena for indigenous folks?
Yeah, I was doing my own music. I was writing the works for classical instruments, but at the same time I was also still making music, whatever way I can do that. So around the Southwest, around Albuquerque, gathering musicians and just gathering to play and encouraging an environment of music making. So maybe what I ended up doing is renting a building and hosting shows for people who wanted to make music. I started a small record label to release the music of other musicians who are based in New Mexico and Arizona. And then on the classical music side, I got an invitation from a music festival called the Grand Canyon Music Festival to start teaching students in that community out there. See, this Grand Canyon Music Festival, they were always um, putting on these wonderful classical music concerts at the canyon, but um, the audience for that would mostly be the tourists who were coming from all over the world to see this, and rarely the would that audience be the indigenous people who've lived an hour away from the Grand Canyon or even been displaced by the national park of the Grand Canyon. Um, and they live very close, but are not attending classical music concerts because those don't come to the reservation.
Mm.
And so I started going to the schools and teaching students and giving them an assignment of writing a 3-minute string quartet. And half of these schools, and this is not limited to the reservation, this is a condition of schools all over the country,
Hmm.
public schools, where arts and music aren't always prioritized. And so on the reservation, it would seem that a school would only have a music teacher if their basketball team was really good or the football
Yeah.
team, because they needed a band for the sporting events. And so about half the schools had good teams, and the other half must have not. But that's, nonetheless, whether the student could read music or not, my job was to come in and get ideas down on paper with them, and we got to figure it out in a week.
And that's got to be fun.
Yeah, oh yeah. It is, and I see myself in those kids, because a lot of them, same thing. They want to be in bands, rock bands, heavy metal bands. A lot of kids they're interested in all kinds of music, hip hop, and so I'm not saying you have to write a classical music composition. You just have to write for classical instruments, but it can end up sounding however it sounds, and likewise, there's still a strong community of traditional music, traditional Navajo music that happens on the reservation. So what I'm always looking for is to see when those emerge. But I don't force the kids and say, you have to make a Navajo sounding string quartet. I think my job is just to filter out or bring in everything that they've ever heard and all of their interests, and just see what happens.
So when did you discover your unique sound? Like, when did you know that you had a different direction other than just, the Beethoven, Bach kind of stuff?
Yeah. I think it was through experimentation. It was trying things that, they when you go to music school, they give you all these rules that have been developed because of Bach and Beethoven. All the rules that say that this sounds correct. And of course, even Bach and Beethoven didn't always follow those rules. But I think there's a part of this of me thinking, those aren't my rules. I should try. I want to try something else, and maybe I don't even like the way that's going to sound, but it's going to be mine. It's going to be my way of doing it. And so just having that attitude got me to developing a sound that I think that I like, and it's changed over the years. Another part of my practice, though, is not even the composition. It's the improvisation part. And so I think that goes back, thinking of this initial interest in the saxophone and other kinds of instruments that are more used for improvisation, jazz music. I didn't study jazz, but I think the freedom of improvisation is something I've always been interested in. That it's you get together with a group of people, or other people who know their instruments very well, and you just play, and you see what happens, and you have a great time, and maybe there's no audience. Maybe you're just doing it for yourselves in the living room or something. And to me, that's a joyous occasion. There's no concert, there's no tickets being sold, there's no quietness before everything begins. You just play, and you're having a great time.
So you're going to be here for from the 4th through the 8th. You have 2 performances. You got a performance today in celebration with the collaborative music folks over there, and then you've got the concert on Tuesday. What can we expect? How do we prepare to come to your show?
Yeah, tonight is going to be myself improvising with a series of instruments that I usually travel with. A lot of these are just electronics, so a mixer, some guitar pedals. I have a bunch of cassette tapes, Walkmans I use. I use those like a sampler. I mean, that's my sampling device. I just record, And you remember answering machines, right? With the cassette tape.
I do.
Yeah. And they used to have the ones where you call the dentist office, and it would just be 30 seconds of saying, "We're not in right now. Please call back on Monday." And it's 30 seconds, and then it loops. And so I have a bunch of these blank cassettes that used to be used in answering machines to record 30 seconds continuously, and I could play it back. So that's one of my instruments. I used to travel with a sheet of glass and a deer antler, and scrape the deer antler on the glass to make a sound.
Did you win friends with that? Like, did you win audience? Because that sounds like I don't, you know, I can feel my hair standing up on the back of my neck just you saying it.
Yeah, it does sound like the nails on the chalkboard kind of thing, but I've developed it. You know, I've turned that into a sound that, with the guitar pedals, that sounds. It doesn't make the hairs stand up so much as what it does now, but I stopped traveling with that because it's just not portable enough, and overseas you can't even take the antler.
Oh.
And so I what I've been using is this small little dome of glass and this stick, and this is used as a turkey call for hunters, but it has the same sound, this kind of scrape and screeching, and so it sounds like an animal. And so this is another instrument that I use as well, and I use voice, you know. So it's a lot of what you're going to hear during this concert is me putting all these things together and making sounds with it.
Mm. So what inspires you? Like, are you one of these people that can walk down the street and hear sound and everything and then be inspired to write around it, compose around that? Like, how do you do what you do, and what inspires you to do it?
Yeah, it's all different. I do that. I do, you know, I'll keep an ear out for sounds. Sometimes, I mean, I used to walk around with a small recording device and try to capture these. Now our phones have these apps, we could do that anytime. So it's nice that I don't have to carry around recording gear. I just need to be really quick with my phone and record one of those sounds. But I'm always on the search for something I've never heard before, and those might end up, you know, on the cassette tape or in the somewhere else in the music. Um, with the chamber music, it's the same thing. I am seeking sounds that one might not have heard before, and I'm interested in how the musician might end up making those sounds. So if it means a violinist bowing, you know, their instrument, well, how can I do it in a way that they have never done before to produce a sound that we haven't heard? And so maybe it means they're doing something with their body they haven't quite done before. But you know, also a lot of other influences that come into making the music. The piece that won the Pulitzer Prize, it's written for church organ, but it's written somewhat in a style of church music, of the kind of you know, classical era, Renaissance era church music that developed over the years in the European churches. Um, but this piece is looking at how the church has been involved in colonization and the loss of language of indigenous people over the years in some of the forcing to become Christian. And so it's called Voiceless Mass. It's written in the style of a vocal mass, but with no liturgical text. Instead, it's an instrumental piece of music. And so sometimes the music is a commentary on history or some of these other even more current events, and trying to find a way that sound and music can tell that story.
So as an indigenous person, do you always feel compelled to add some element of your culture, history, into anything that you do artistically?
Yeah, I do. I don't always do it though. I think, you know, sometimes I just want to write a piece for trumpet and it doesn't have any meaning. You know? I mean, you know, and that's good too, because otherwise people are going to start expecting me to have something every time, or be the angry Native American guy, you know, and that's
Oh, I do know.
yeah, and they're going to start pigeonholing us, right, and always expecting that we, you know, and like I said, why not? There's those times when I just want to play in the living room with my friends, play music, and have a great time. I'm not walking around angry, but on the other side of that,
And you have every right to be angry. You know,
that's right.
Let's be clear about that. Like,
that's right. That's right.
You could be absolutely angry.
And there's times, you know, I think a piece like Voiceless Mass, it's not completely accusatory. I think I want to look at the value of it being a opportunity to let people know about this history as well. And so that's been a good, you know, really amazing outcome of winning that prize, is now it gets played all the time, and it can only be played in churches. So it's forced a dialogue with the leaders of those churches to come and say, yeah, we acknowledge this and thank you for writing this piece because we need to acknowledge and apologize for this history.
That's pretty impressive because it has been churches that really done the most harm
Yeah,
to the indigenous people in this country.
that's yeah. It's one of the institutions that definitely has.
Yeah. So to get them to reckon with their own history is pretty big.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm just happy that a music award, and a music composition can bring about that conversation.
Hmm. So who do you listen to these days? Do you listen? Do you find yourself listening to popular music? I mean, you mentioned Kendrick Lamar, so you have some awareness. I mean, do you listen to all kinds? Do you listen to other indigenous music from Africa or India or
Oh yeah,
the Asian music? What?
yeah, yeah. That. Yeah, thank you for asking and mentioning that. Yeah, Kendrick, Kendrick, I definitely, especially when he won the award, I was really listening and thinking, yeah, I should know this music more. Um, and you're right. I think what interests me the most is looking at music from all over the world because those aren't confined to the rigidness of the Western scale, the Western meters, the notation that classical people use. It's not adequate to explain the other music that gets made around the world. Africa, Asia, indigenous music in Australia.
Mm.
So I'm always when I have free time. That's the hard part is the free time to listen while I'm working on another piece of music. I really can't do it because I start writing like the thing I'm listening to. Yeah.
There's
So
no such thing as free time.
yeah, there's no. So that's the unfortunate thing. I had been doing a project out in the Middle East and had been listening to a lot of Bedouin music.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that was really interesting. A lot of the vocal music that they do. But I think my favorite experiences. I think it's less listening, to recorded music and finding the opportunities to go listen to live music, whatever
I was
that
going
might
to
be.
ask you if you have time to go because I talk to a lot of artists and a lot of artists have friends who perform and do stuff and they try to get to their shows, but they're traveling too, so it makes
Yeah.
for a challenge. So I was wondering if you got to see live stuff.
Yeah, every now and then, and maybe it's something where I'm teaching in the day, or I'm going as a visiting professor, like here, and then maybe somebody says, "Hey, look, there's a concert going tonight, going on. Let's check it out." And those are the opportunities where I usually, if I'm not exhausted, I'll say yes because I'm, I don't know who's playing, but usually it's a recommendation, and I'm in a new city, and I go see something that I would have never seen otherwise. So those are usually when that happens. Other than that, though, yeah, there's no time.
So do you have is there a genre of music that you like to jump into? Is there some genre that you like to compose for that you haven't done, but you could clearly kind of hear it in your mind's eye? Like I think I could, if you had time, what would be the dream composition?
Ah, yeah, that's a good question. I think I like combining instruments. I think they recently did a project with a person who plays the pedal steel. And it has this kind of possibly country, possibly Hawaiian sounding sound to it,
Mm-hmm.
and combining that with other kinds of instruments that maybe are not uh, supposed to be with that instrument. So yeah, like a saxophone or a timpani, or maybe there's an indigenous drum or a shaker, something that just wouldn't go together. I guess that's probably how you end up with these spaghetti westerns, was
Yeah.
these Italians doing this kind of thing, and it sounded like yeah, it's like some people in the desert, and so those accidents are what I'm interested in. The combination of instruments might produce something that I'm not able to plan. So I think it's more that finding some kind of genre or hybrid genre that could come about just because of the instruments and the people who play them and the situation too.
Mm, mm. So now, what advice are you going to have for young people today and tomorrow and the next day? Because you know you're going to get questions about how did you do it, and
Yeah.
I want to do this, and but you know I'm an astrophysicist student, but my heart is really over here in this music. You know, what do you say to these young people?
Yeah, for music in particular, I think what I do tell young people is if you want to be in that band, you want to be producing records or just making music, just go do it. Just borrow the car or get on the train or the bus and go to the next town and play music, and then go to the next one and do it again. And maybe you got to come back on Monday and go to school, but go do it on the weekends. Get a
Mm.
group of people together and form a band and go play. And maybe nobody will come the first 10 times, 20 times, in my case 100 times. I only played for the door person or the sound guy, but you just keep doing it, and eventually you'll start meeting people, and people will remember that you're doing this, and that's it. It just keeps building. And
Mm.
same with recording. I mean, we can all, when 30 years ago, I mean, it was very difficult to record. You'd find a way to do it, and maybe you'd put it on a cassette tape and share it with friends, but now you can upload your music anywhere. And
Mm.
so it's a great time to be a musician and share your work. You just have to do the work. That's what it is. It's still work.
Well, welcome to New Haven, Raven, and I'm so glad that you'll be here. Let people buy you pizza, take you to pizza. It's the
Yeah.
pizza capital. Walk around, take it in. There's lots to see here. It's a wonderful, walkable city, and I'm so glad that you'll be here. I hope to get to your concert either today or Tuesday, and hear some of this beautiful music. Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me, Babs.
I appreciate you. Good luck. Have a good time.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Take care. All right, Doreen, I'm gonna take a break, and I'll be back at 10:15.